Okay, hello, hello, hello. I did my bingo earlier, so I'm a little bit tired. Today is February the 11th at 8:57. This is Trump news. I've gotten a couple people, well, where'd you get this information? Hey, why don't you, hi, Jill. Why don't you look, because I left you the links. Hi, Paula. Okay, so here you go. This just happened, I think it was around 15 hours ago at the most. Let's see. I am going to play it. It will have a commercial. There's nothing I can do except for let it go through. Okay, here we go.
Federal workers, as you know, are in limbo after a federal judge extended the pause on the Trump administration's buyout offer. Again, other more high-profile employees have more clarity, such as the head of the Office of Government Ethics, who was canned on Monday. Joining us now is Kathy Harris. Kathy Harris has an extensive background in employment law. She was sworn in as the chair of the U.S. Merit Systems Protection Board last year. If you haven't heard of that board, it hears termination and whistleblower cases for federal employees. And Kathy, we hear that you just heard some news about your job.
Yes. Unfortunately, last night I got an email from the White House stating that my position on the Merit Systems Protection Board would be terminated effective immediately.
Now, it's a Senate position, right? Senate confirmed position.
Senate confirmed. I was nominated by President Biden, confirmed by the Senate for both my position as member and chairman.
So the Government Accountability Project calls your firing, quote, unlawful, and you're taking it to court. Tell us more about that.
I agree with the Government Accountability Project. I'm supposed to only be able to be fired for cause that's malfeasance in office, neglect of duty, or inefficiency, none of which apply to me. I've done a really good job. We've eliminated the backlog that accrued at the board after 5 years without a quorum. We had 3,800 cases. I've got it down to about 1% left now. We've been incredibly efficient, small but mighty. So we're a bipartisan board. Our members have terms that are supposed to extend, spanning administrations, and my term is supposed to go till March 1st, 2028. So I believe that my firing was illegal and I should be put back to work.
And what do? How does one even appeal this decision or file a lawsuit on this?
Well, like some other heads of agencies who have filed, they filed in U.S. District Court, and that's what I plan to do.
Can other federal workers sue if they feel like they've been wrongfully terminated?
Well, they bring their suits to the Merit Systems Protection Board.
They bring it right to you. Okay.
Yeah. So, it's ironic. I think this is part of a attack really on the civil service, undermining the independence of federal agencies that are here to protect against grift and corruption and prevent employment decisions based on political partisanship or patronage. That's what we're here to protect against. So dismantling those kinds of agencies is really troubling for the American people and for federal civil servants.
So you're an attorney, so one presumes that you have faith in the judicial system. We heard at the beginning of the show today, I was saying we don't know if we're headed for a constitutional crisis because the Trump administration was hinting that they might ignore what the judges have been saying. But then Trump had a press conference in the Oval Office and said that they
Whoa, ignore the courts? Well, the courts are what brings the cases up to Supreme Court if need to be. And that. And firing when you have people who believe in Trump. Give me a reason why anywhere the checks and balance of our government are being fired. Come on. Come tell me. Come tell me why anybody that does the checks and balance of our government has been fired. Well, let's see. Here we go. Tell me why he stopped the money for the farmers and that. Why do you stop the money for a lot of causes? Yeah, Trump doesn't like them. Because they're honest people. You know, they're honest workers. The people in the government that he's taken out. I know I'm not naming them. Trump's destroying what, like he said, the enemy within. Isn't that sounding like him? And Trump wants to not follow the court of laws. So you're telling us that it's okay Trump doesn't want to follow the court system? And you still think Trump is the best? That he's weeding out and trying to save us money? Are you really that? Oh, how do I want to say this? Naive of what's going on? Are you that naive that you have not even thought about looking at anything I've said on these days? I doubt you did. You just want to go with the flow. You think he is doing everything correctly. Well, let's just see. On the plane, he said he would not, wasn't going to, he had promised before that he would not do the 25% to Canada and all that. Well, that's back on with our steel and aluminum. Let's see, what else did he do? Excuse me. He also went back on that he stopped a lot of different referendums that he had put up, that he signed executive orders. I think I got off a little bit on the subject, but let's get it this way. Remember, I told you yesterday how many cases are against him and Elon. And why do you think all these different departments, different departments of our government is fighting back? Why do you think the Democrats are honestly making a fight for our Constitution? And if you don't feel Trump is doing this, yeah, Trump is the enemy. And how can you believe he's going to save $2 billion? Yeah, he just pretty much could have done that with all the employees. Okay? Just think about that. But who is going to do the work? There will be nobody there to do the work. Just like our farmers, just like our air traffic. Oh, yeah, by the way, wasn't there another plane crash? Let me see. Oh, and you still think Trump is the man that's going to change? Yeah, to a dictator area. Do you understand that you really need to listen? Those who are listening and understand this, please help me get this spread around, because we, the people working together, will only be only ones that are able to save our Constitution. So I'm going to continue with this, and there's a lot of different information tonight. So I said what I wanted to say right now. There we go. We're going to finish that.
They would listen to what the judges say. It's just an appeals process that takes a long time. But looking at this bigger picture, given the fact that the legislative branch of Congress seems to have just decided to let Trump do whatever he wants to do, do you have confidence that the judiciary can provide the appropriate checks and balances on the executive branch as our founding fathers wanted?
Listen, I'm an attorney. I swore an oath to the Constitution. I believe in the rule of law. And I believe the American people also want the rule of law because it protects all of us. And I think that people should speak out, talk to their congresspeople, their representatives, and make their opinions known that we want rule of law. I think that matters. I think that matters to people. And until it comes to your doorstep, you know, you may not think it applies to you, but there's millions of federal workers, there's millions of American people who are going to be affected by this. And we all want the judiciary to be able to do its constitutional role. We want Congress to step up and do its role. And so I do believe in it. It's held up all this time for these hundreds of years. And I believe in our country. I'm a patriot, and I'm hoping for the best.
All right, well, stay in touch and let us know how this all goes. Kathy Harris, thanks.
Okay. There we go. I'm back. The next one is just fired on Monday. And then stop and think about what this guy does. Okay? Let's go with it. Okay. Now, here's what we gotta do. USAID fired day after report critical of impacts of Trump administration dismantling of an agency. Okay, let's go see what this is. And it's by Jennifer Hensler. This is the gentleman. Okay, I'm going to put it right there for right now. Paul Martin was informed via an email from the Deputy Director of the Office of Presidential Personnel Tuesday evening that his position, so that means today, that his position as an Inspector General of the USAID was terminated effective immediately. Okay, just because he wrote a report, people doing their jobs, he get fired. The Inspector General Agency for International Development was fired Tuesday after his office released a report critical of Trump's administration efforts to dismantle the agency. Of source familiar with matter told to CNN. Paul Martin was informed by an email, Deputy Director of the Office of the presidential personnel on Tuesday evening of his post of Inspector General was immediately terminated. Okay, let me do this part here. A spokesman for the USA Office Inspector General confirmed Martin's termination and said no reason was given for his ouster. CN has reached out to the White House for comment. The administration is required under the law to provide 30-day notice to Congress before firing inspector generals, provided case-specific reasons for getting rid of a watchdog. Martin was served as inspector general December 2023, while President Donald Trump fires inspector generals from more than a dozen federal agencies during the first week of office. The USAID watchdogs has remained in place as an IG conduct of investigation and audit into the potential manifest fraud, waste, or abuse by government agencies, or is it its personnel and issues report of recommendations of the finding? The Inspector General Office is to intend to operate independently. Let me see if there's any more. Okay, there we go. Staff of the U.S. Office Inspector have also been informed they no longer have access to their physical office space. Two sources familiar with the matter told CNN, although the Trump administration closes the headquarters buildings of U.S. Last week, personnel as a watchdog office has since been permitted to work in person in the same building until Tuesday. In a report Monday, USAID OIG said that Trump's administration reduction of USAID personnel and its sweeping freeze on foreign assistance has made it more difficult to track response to potential misuse of $8.2 billion in U.S. taxpayers funded humanitarian assistance. Trump administration says, there we go. That's the part. Do you remember the farmers were supposed to get paid? Well, this is the money right there that they were supposed to get, okay, for sending their crop over, which is just sitting on the outside spoiling, which the other people, not the ones that are running the place, has took all the food for free. Not for the people that need it. They're starving and dying over there. Little kids. Okay. So Trump administration has aggressively dismantled USAID in recent weeks, attempting to put thousands of direct hires of USAID employees. Thousands of our people are out of work. Employees on leave or removing scores of contractors who for the agency. Last Friday, federal judge temporarily blocked those plans and halted the acceleration removal of staff from the countries around the world. Yeah, I told you that our military can't come back. They're stuck over in the other countries. Although Monday, IG reports noted that the office has long identified significant changes and offers recommendations to improve agency programs to prevent fraud, waste, and abuse. It is makes clear that the slashing of the USAID personnel and the foreign assistant freeze have navigated impacts efforts at oversight. Recent widespread staffing reduction across the agency, coupled with certain about the scope of a foreign assistant waivers and permissible communication with implement makers has dangerous USAID abilities to dispute and safeguard taxpayers funded humanitarian your money assistant, the report says. USAID requires that programs of Afghanistan and Iraq, Libya, Palestine, Syria, and the West Banks of Gaza and Yemen receive partner vetting in order to ensure that taxpayers' funds do not end up in supporting groups like the Hamas and Hezbollah, ISIS, and the Houthis. According to the reports, vending efforts have gone to a halt because of the reduction in staff of the USA. So, and otherwise, Trump went and cut all these people out. So, where the freezing was supposed to be, which he's not, he still has some things frozen, that would do this kind of stuff. There is stuff. Okay. Sorry. The vast majority of more than 1,000 persons workforce in U.S. Bureau of Humanitarian Assistance, BHA, has already been impacted by full lords or stand to be put on the leave, said the reporter. Collectively executed and planned personnel actions would remove temporary or permanent approximately 90% of the BHA's worldwide workforce. It said this staffing reduction has also had a negative impact on the agency's ability to respond to reports of a potential misuse of humanitarian funding. Okay, so I want to so let's put it this way. How's that looking for us who take care of other countries? And you're saying we got to take care of ourselves first? Republicans, why haven't you done that? Republicans, why didn't you do any work last year? Not a single bill passed because you didn't want to work. It was all, let's impeach Biden and his son and this and that. I mean, you wasted millions of dollars on trying to impeach a man that you couldn't impeach because there was no case. So there you go, your wasted money. There you go. What's the other point I wanted to bring up on that? So there's your money he's saving because he is taking it that employees are no longer there to do the work that is needed to be done, and the helping hand we do for good representing United States as a good ally to have. So here's also what happened. Trump changed his mind. Instead of buying Guatemala, he's invading it. He's taking it. Oh, the Gulf of Mexico, now it's Gulf of America, where he doesn't have the rights. It is an equal partition of the 1976, or wait a minute, I forget what year it was, but the Mexico and America agreed that would say Gulf of Mexico. Okay, neither one has any more rights than the other. So there's on that. Okay, let's look at Trump's new scandal exposed. Okay, here we go. Oh yeah, on the plane he said he wanted to buy and build things down there. You know, like hotels and stuff like that. Okay, here we go. Let me make sure I got this up. I do. Okay. And let's play this. Where is it? Right up there. Excuse me. Excuse me.
While Trump and Elon claim to be rooting out waste, fraud, and abuse, you've got Trump's new defense secretary, Pete Hegseth, who's apparently looking for $137,000 in taxpayer funds for repairs for his government residence, including $49,000 for a, quote, emergency paint job. And look, I'm no defense secretary, but I think on the list of emergencies when overseeing the biggest and most lethal military on the planet, one that's failed 7 audits in an increasingly dangerous world with a land war in Europe, a land war in the Middle East, and autocracies on the rise, my definition of emergency probably wouldn't include a fucking paint job. But hey, that's just me.
Would you agree? Would you agree? Hi, Adam. Would you agree with that? I mean, come on. Why are you taking money out of our account so you can get your house painted and that? Come on. And that's cutting back on the unnecessary amount of money being spent. I'm sorry. Here's the thing with that. The bureaucrats have always done things like that. You know, like the military. And yes, he is going to cut our military down. You think he's not? Just watch and listen. So here we go. Let's go to breaking news. Oh, 1 second. Let me get this. Okay. Okay, that's the one I want. Okay.
Prospect of Trump not complying with court orders as he continues to commit illegal actions and then get blocked by the courts. It looks like we have finally arrived there. Can you explain what just happened?
Yeah, so a federal judge in Rhode Island who had previously issued what's called a temporary restraining order, telling the Trump administration that it must lift the freeze on the billions of dollars in federal funding that had been allocated to the states. So after that order had been issued, the Trump administration had some time to comply and lift the freeze. And just today, Brian, we got another court order. It looks like the Trump administration has not complied with that temporary restraining order. So the 22 state attorneys general went back into court and sought a motion.
Oh, you mean our legal Trump, who hired all cabinet members who have shady backgrounds just like him. The 34 counts of, I'm sorry, guys, my head is hurting today. Convicted felon Trump is. Only wants felon people around him. So you're saying you're going to trust him with all our money, that he's doing right. A felon, a guilty felon, a rapist, and everything else with it. Why I still call him a rapist? He penetrated. I have it on Jean, whatever her name is. I can't think of it. Anyways, I hate when I can't say words and that. It really bothers me. But him follow rules? Oh, wait a minute. He got out of being espionage, treason, rigging the votes. He's even calling this that he won the election, that it was rigged. How could it be rigged? Are you telling me that you rigged it so you could win, but it should have been more? And there was people out there actually doing their job correctly. You didn't get to every city, state, county, whatever across America. Is that what you're trying to tell us, Trump? Okay, let's go back to him.
Motion to enforce the judge's earlier order. But really, the blockbuster news is this is the first time a federal court judge has issued a ruling, a finding that the Trump administration is violating a federal court order. The judge is Judge John J. McConnell Jr. And Brian, he didn't mince any words, because right in the opening salvo of today's order, he said, it's a basic proposition that all orders and judgments of courts must be complied with promptly. The judge put all of that in bold print, which you don't often see in court orders. Persons who make private determinations of the law and refuse to obey an order generally risk criminal contempt. That is a shot across the bow. Now, it's important to note that the judge did not hold the Trump administration or any official in contempt today, nor did he impose any sanctions, any fines. But it sounds like when Judge McConnell is opening with, y'all are running the risk of criminal contempt, which can include punishment, including confinement. You know, the Trump administration may want to think twice about whether they want to continue to violate court orders.
Okay, so Glenn, the judge didn't hold these people in contempt, even though they're flouting the orders that were handed down by the court. Why not? I mean, we have seen, not just from this administration in the last couple of weeks, but Donald Trump in the last few years continue to flout these orders, knowing full well that he can continue to bank off of the goodwill of these judges. And yet it seems that the justice system, that the judicial system isn't learning its lesson, that Trump isn't interested in deferring to the law, that he's going to continue to take every inch he can get. And until these judges actually take swift and severe action against him, he'll continue to barrel ahead. And so why not just learn the lessons from the past, hold these people in contempt if you're already seeing that they're willing to refuse to abide by the court orders that were handed down?
Yeah, here's why, Brian. In my 30 years being a federal prosecutor, handling, among other things, contempt charges and contempt cases, judges never, and I'm not even going to qualify that by saying almost never, judges never hold somebody in contempt for the first violation, the first transgression. What they do is they order them to comply. Now, when you read this very short court order issued today, the judge says, you know what? The Trump administration tried to say, well, we're just ferreting out fraud, waste, and abuse. And the judge said, I didn't give you any kind of an exception that would give you an escape hatch like that. Also, the Trump administration tried to say, well, there was actually a different executive order issued, and that's why we did or didn't do certain things. The judge was having none of it. So basically, you know, you usually get one bite at the violating a court order apple before judges start to get serious. So now the judge will have to monitor this order. Now that he's ordered them to comply, to see if, in fact, they continue to defy the order or if they comply. And if they continue to defy, I can almost promise you the next thing you're going to see are what are called show cause hearings. You, Donald Trump, and your administration must show cause as to why I shouldn't hold you in contempt, because you.
Okay, so now there's one part where it is Trump thinking he is king. If you cannot read what's being done right in front of you, I really pity you, because you are going to be shocked to the max. You're going to say, well, why didn't you Democrats do this? Well, you Republicans got all three parts of the judicial, the government, legislators and judicial and executive. Now, how can a Democrat do anything when you got all the power? And this guy tells you, have he done anything except for cut off? What has he given you? Is there cheaper gas? Nope, went up. Food? Nope, went up. Shortage of food coming? Yep. Oh, by the way, did anyone go and look and see exactly what is made here and grown here in the United States? I bet you none of you did, none of you Republicans. But Democrats will go look because they want to know. They want to know what they can get on the stock of that's going to be at the stores and that.
You've been warned once. And then there are different kinds of contempt. They can proceed with civil contempt, which is really more about fines, or they can go to criminal contempt, which can include actually detaining, confining, jailing administration officials. But let me tell you, if the judge decides to go the way of criminal contempt, there will be some more criminal contempt hearings, because then the person who is at risk of being confined has some due process rights, and there will be a hearing conducted. So listen, this is not something that ever happens instantly. It usually doesn't happen, the first time there is a violation of the court order. It builds over time, but I think this one is going to build and come to a head pretty quickly.
Well, Glenn, let's game this out for a moment. And let's say, for example, that a judge does decide to try and hold an administration official under criminal contempt. Ultimately, it would be under the purview of the U.S. Marshals to actually enforce that. But aren't these U.S. Marshals under the purview of the DOJ? And so you'd have the administration would be responsible for enforcing criminal action against other administration officials, which clearly they would have no interest in doing?
Yeah, Brian, that's the perfect question, because that is exactly where the rubber meets the road. Let's assume that after a hearing, the judge finds that a particular Trump administration official is in criminal contempt, knowingly, intentionally, and repeatedly violating court orders. What happens next? Well, it would be the United States Marshals Service that would be responsible for example, hauling that official into court and executing a court order to take that official into custody and put them in a Federal Bureau of Prisons facility. And people will say, well, wait a minute, because the U.S. Marshal Service is part of the Department of Justice and ultimately controlled by who? Donald Trump. Wouldn't he just tell them not to comply? He can try. But here's the thing, Brian, there's a federal law that sets out the responsibilities of the U.S. Marshal Service. Anybody scoring at home, it's 28 United States Code, Section 566. And here's what it says. It is the primary role and mission of the United States Marshal Service to provide security for federal judges and to obey, execute, and enforce all orders of the United States District Courts. What does that mean? That means that the U.S. Marshal Service is obligated by federal law to enforce court orders. And here's the thing, Brian, we are getting closer and closer to a true constitutional crisis when the executive branch of government says, even though we are duty bound by our constitutional construct to comply with lawfully issued federal court orders, we're not doing it. Then the United States Marshal Service has a decision to make, and I don't believe it's a difficult decision. Let me say, I worked with the good men and women of the U.S. Marshal Service for decades. They take their responsibility and their loyalty to the Constitution deadly seriously. And I think the success of Donald Trump attempting to plunge us into a constitutional crisis depends on just how many people Donald Trump can recruit to his what is a de facto criminal conspiracy to undermine the laws of our nation and to undermine the Constitution. I do not believe, and I hope I'm not being naive about this, that the men and women of the U.S. Marshal Service will say, we're going to violate the federal law that requires us to execute lawfully issued federal court orders by federal court judges. Instead, we're going to walk away from the Constitution and from our legal obligations, and we're going to side with a corrupt president. I am looking for the U.S. Marshals Service to stand strong against crime, corruption, and unconstitutional behavior and execute court orders by federal court judges.
Well, Glenn, here's my pushback to that, and I hope I'm not being too cynical here, although there's a low bar for how cynical we could be these days. But hearing that it's unlikely to see the U.S. Marshal Service do something illegal, I mean, at the same time, we're also talking about them reacting to the prospect of the situation that we are currently in, which is that Donald Trump his administration was ordered to do something. He refused to comply with a lawful order handed down by a judge. And so that's why we're in this situation. We're already in a situation where the federal government isn't following the law. And so that's why it's difficult for me to see that and say, okay, well, we couldn't possibly see a situation where somebody would, in the federal government would defy the law because we're this whole thought experiment is in response to the Trump administration already doing exactly that.
Yeah, the Trump administration is acting lawlessly. Indeed, it's acting unconstitutionally when, for example, Donald Trump signs an executive order revoking the constitutional right of birthright citizenship. And a Reagan-appointed judge who's been on the bench for 4 decades said, and I quote, "It is blatantly unconstitutional," that executive order. So we see the executive branch acting lawlessly and unconstitutionally. We see Congress, the Republicans in Congress, just laying down for Donald Trump and acting as his doormat. They're not, asserting themselves. They're not protecting their own rights and interests as a co-equal branch of government. So what's to say the United States Marshal Service will do any better? All I can say is, having worked with those men and women, I expect them to do better. It doesn't mean that they may go the way of the Republicans in Congress and the Trump administration. I just hope and believe they won't go that way until they do. And then, Brian, basically, the executive branch has co-opted all 3 branches of government, because if the judiciary cannot rely on the law that mandates that their orders must be executed and complied with, if we can't rely on that, well, then Trump has successfully co-opted all branches of government, and then welcome to the American dictatorship.
Well, look, I do want to note to that exact point that political gravity does exist. And I think that it is important that we call this stuff out as it happens so that people can be aware of it, push back on it. And we've seen the Trump administration relent before when political gravity becomes too great. So we'll continue to follow up on this stuff as soon as we have any updates. For those who are watching right now, please make sure to subscribe. The links to both.
Okay. And I'm back. 1 second. I need a drink. Okay. So, you heard that. That's a lawyer. That's Brian, who is very, very intelligent and very right. He's #1 bestseller book. New York's #1. So, yes, we want to do, let's see. let's go to this one first. Okay, I'm not looking at it greatly. Now, the reason I'm showing videos is because y'all know I don't speak well. So, and no one wants to take my word or make it that this is where I'm getting my information. Now, I'm not just getting on this one side. I did go and look today at the other side. And it contradicted of everything that these ones were saying. However, when did JD, our vice president, feel YouTube force me? JD says, hey, our court system, the judge, this is why I don't talk too well. I can't, I'll just say what it is. The courts that they are all being, I can't stand it when I can't say a word. Not Supreme Court, but federal court, excuse me. That's the word I was looking for. The federal court, JD says that they don't have power over the judicial or executive or in that system. So why should Trump follow that for the federal courts? Because he doesn't understand federal courts. You can't get to the Supreme Court until it's gone through the federal courts. Period. So that's who is our elective people. We have a president that does not know nothing about the American history, our judicial, does not know any of our laws and our constitution and all that. He wants what he wants, and he feels he's gay. So Mike, the head of the Speaker of the House, excuse me, agreed with JD. Are you really that stupid, people? There is no way you can use any word except for the word stupid. Because you know nothing about how our government runs, how we, the people, are in charge. Well, you voted them in. No, I didn't vote them in. But however, they're doing wrong, and I will continue doing this because you might think I'm batshit crazy. But you know what? This batshit crazy is more smarter than you. Because if you still believe what all Trump is doing, then you're wrong. Oh, wait, yeah, by the way, where's Trump the past couple days? Down in Mar-a-Lago playing golf. Now, you say, well, he gives up his paycheck. No, he doesn't give up his paycheck. And again, did any of you Republicans go and check on his ex-wife, the deceased Ivanka, where she's buried? I should do that. I should get a picture of it for you all to show you how much respect he had for this woman. Okay. You know what's really disrespectful? Her kids not following up with it. Given the respect of the mother's grave site. So here, let's let me get you the next video. I understand a lot of these people do the 15 minutes. Well, I'm covering different channels in different ways of different information. So that's why mine's longer. I know people are not watching it all the way through, but it's still got to be said. Okay. Excuse me. Okay. The headline says, oh God, let me get my glass. My eyes are hurting. Breaking news. In court, Trump loses on funding citizenship federal staffing. Okay. That's today's one. Let me get over here to the page to put it out. There we go. Now, this is the oath he takes. Now, look at that face. I don't care what you say. I got the prize.
Court losses. Yesterday, 5 different legal setbacks. That's on 5 separate issues, ranging from birthright citizenship to this ongoing clash over what judges have ruled was an unlawful attempt to freeze a wide range of federal funding. Now, the White House is fighting these injunctions. And on the one hand, they are allowed to do that, to go to court and appeal. They're calling them, quote, unlawful injunctions. Courts have the last word and say otherwise, while Trump is asking judges to do the right thing.
I think judges will have to do the right thing, really. Otherwise, you're going to have a whole big problem with the country.
Now, as is often the case, it depends what you interpret that as. Presidents often appeal judgments. They have a whole Justice Department to do that, and they can say what they think the right thing is to do. They are, after all, the sitting president. But that, coupled with what the vice president and other Trump allies have suggested darkly, that they might just defy rulings they disagree with to bring the often threatened constitutional crisis to a head, that is a problem and could put a type of pressure on the courts that is out of bounds. That could also backfire. You can imagine judges saying they're not going to be bullied into this 20 days in. Then there's the other piece we've been telling you about, how state attorneys general, representing the separate power of the states, are going at this. Just look at the multi-state lawsuits in the first term. You can see that this happens and is part of the give and take, but it has increased recently. First term Trump holding the record there, Biden coming in with a high number as we've seen some polarization and clashes increase. And now in these first couple weeks, it's grinding on. What matters more, though, even than how many cases are filed, is what happens, right? The Trump policies are getting shot down left and right by judges appointed from the left and right. In other words, the federal courts have leaned more to the right. Donald Trump, you might recall, got more judges on the Supreme Court. And even in that playing field, he is losing quickly in these initial clashes. And that's because, as legal experts and others will tell you, when things are clearly over the line or illegal under recent case law, meaning courts have already looked at the issue. They already said you can't do that. You can't rewrite the Constitution through an executive order. I told you that the day he tried to rewrite the 14th Amendment citizenship. It's since been paused on a national basis. And that's why he's running into so many problems.
Judges don't do this out of the air. And furthermore, that there has to be irreparable harm. And the notion that judges across the country have done this is really should give this government pause, that they have done what they've done is not just mildly illegal, but very, very illegal. What they are doing isn't even close to legitimate.
One judge there putting the context on it, speaking to Jen Psaki. And remember, honest judges will tell you about the law. They're not just adding an opinion about whether they agree with these policies. That judge discussing how so many of these things are so wide of the law. Another judge rebuking the Trump administration for defying that court order, which ended the attempted freeze on federal funding. Now, that was just yesterday. Now the heat is on whether government agencies are complying and whether Trump's attempt, along with Elon Musk, to sort of shake and threaten and disassemble the entire federal bureaucracy as we know it will work. Now, there are problems here if you judge by law, facts, and precedent. It does not mean that we are yet at the constitutional crisis boiling point. And we're going to get into that tonight. I'm going to always show you what's going on. I'm not going to minimize problems, but we're not quite at the 10. Here's where we are at. FEMA, of course, a key safety agency, has one top official reportedly demanding people defy the court order, basically telling the staff to still freeze funding. We have health staffers who are banned from issuing most grants based on a written directive and reports of a Monday meeting. Over at Interior, they're telling people that climate money is still frozen. And at another health agency, there's been a warning that Trump's orders could result in delays or rejections of payments. The states have their own intelligence, their own information, and they say they've been told most of this climate funding is just paused.
Multiple states, including Colorado, reported being denied access to federal funds.
In Massachusetts alone, he says $316 million in climate-related funding remains frozen. Farmers across the country and here in Maine are experiencing funding roadblocks due to politics.
Some farmers tell us they are being directly impacted by President Donald Trump's federal funding freeze.
Medical research done here in Colorado on everything from Alzheimer's to cancer is now at risk as the Trump administration tries to strip away tens of millions of dollars in federal funding.
That's what we're learning from a variety of sources, from the formal federal directives and the reporting out of Washington, where a lot of these agencies are, of course, headquartered, out to the states, where, as I mentioned, you have clashes and lawsuits, and also the trickle-down effects of all this. At a policy level, we talked law, and I'll return to it, but at a policy level, this is what happens when you make these big changes. And in states, red, purple, and blue, if you keep gutting people's funds, particularly in an intemperate, almost rash, unpredictable manner, and the farmers are hurt and the scientists are hurt, and before you know it, the schools are hurt and the families are hurt, that will play out over time. And there will be a debate over whether that's good policy. Second is the baseline, the Constitution and the rule of law, and the efforts to use this and other clashes, which, remember, Donald Trump, you could say he ran on certain claims about the government, but this thing, this level of cuts, this automatic, without even involving his Republican colleagues on the Hill or the past laws that have already been put on the books, and then doing it through his billionaire friend who's not even in the cabinet, won't even say to you, the taxpayer, that he'll pass any of the normal ethical and anti-corruption screening that is involved for every other cabinet member. This thing isn't what he campaigned on. And whether it is ultimately long-term lawful to freeze the funding this way, that's the big debate right now, because the early judges, I'm not going to tell you what the Supreme Court will do in the future, but the early judges have said, no, if you want to cut funding, you have to do it going forwards, not backwards. This ain't Minority Report, Tom Cruise, you know, if you know the movie. You can't go backwards in time and cancel what the Congress already did under law. And second, most of this stuff, you can't override what judges say. If they say the money is freed up, well, in virtually all circumstances, it is then freed up. So why, as I just showed you, are some of these folks at least courting or trying to ramp up to that constitutional crisis that we may not have yet hit? And what will lawmakers, including the ones who pass these very laws, do about it? We turn to a top senator, Ed Markey, when we're back in 90 seconds.
Senator Markey says this is money that's already been approved by Congress. In Massachusetts alone, he says $316 million in climate-related funding remains frozen, even though the Trump administration has been ordered to release it.
We're joined now by United States Senator Ed Markey. What do you see as important, apart from sort of the hype and the bluster and the daring of the courts? What's important on this right now?
Right now, it's critical to understand, and Ari, you know this, on your first day in law school, in constitutional law, the very first day, they explain to you that the federal courts determine what is constitutional, not the Congress, not the president. Now, the president this week and Elon Musk and J.D. Vance, they're very unhappy that that's the way our founding fathers constructed the Constitution. And so on birthright citizenship, they've now been blocked. On freezing all federal funds, they've now been blocked. On cutting NIH funding, they've been blocked. On getting into all of the information about every American at the Department of Treasury, violating privacy rights of all Americans, they've been blocked. So they're very unhappy. But they're unhappy because they don't like the Constitution. They don't like the checks and balances. They don't like the system that was constructed to make sure that we did not have a king. We did not have a dictator. But we had, in fact, a system that ensured that all of these constitutional rights would be protected. And so right now, they're stymied for the time being, but ultimately we know what the plot is. The plot is to get into Medicare, to get into Medicaid, to get into all of the Department of Education funding programs, to get into clean air, to get into clean water. And why? To find the hundreds of billions of dollars in order to have the tax breaks for the millionaires and billionaires. So they're right now frustrated by the courts, who are saying, no, there are safeguards, there are procedures. There are laws on the books that have been passed by Congress and signed by presidents that block you from doing this, Mr. President. And they're very unhappy, but they're only unhappy because the United States Constitution is blocking them from doing what is illegal and unconstitutional.
So is your view, based on what we know today, that it's largely working, the line is holding, the courts are doing what you just described, or that you're concerned that they are then flouting the laws? And I tried with some detail to show that they're both data points, if you will, or both examples in this early stretch.
I think what they're trying to do right now publicly is browbeat the Supreme Court. They're trying to browbeat them into succumbing to their view of what is constitutional and what is legal. And at the federal district court level so far, it hasn't worked. And so I just think they're out on a public campaign. As we know, Trump's plan, per Roy Cohn, who taught him, is attack, attack, attack.
Sure.
Number one. Number two, never admit you made a mistake. And number three, even when you lose, call it a victory. So it's 1, 2, 3. So they keep replaying this whole political scenario over and over again. But the courts are there to ensure that the Constitution is primary in the lawmaking in our country that affects every single citizen. And I expect them to continue to be frustrated with many of these decisions right through and up to the United States Supreme Court, because the precedents that are going to be set are also going to apply when there's a Democratic president, when there's a Democratic House and Senate.
Let me ask you this.
That's a dangerous ground to be on.
We've been covering this, and we haven't seen most Republicans in the Senate object on most things so far. Senator Graham disagreed on freeing and pardoning violent convicts who attacked police. Pretty low bar. McConnell disagreed on tariffs, citing business reasons. But for the most part, we know in public they're not disagreeing with much. Do you have any indication in private or in the actual governing, especially with your colleagues who are on 6-year terms that outlast this presidential term, that if there is to be major changes to the funding, to the state, to the way this entire administrative state functions, obviously legally it has to go through the Congress, and they can see what they can get, and not through these unilateral sort of wannabe king games. Do any of your colleagues have any private view on that? Do you see any concern there, or they've already surrendered?
Look, on the nominations, as Godfather Part 1 teaches us in politics, a lot of these people have received offers they can't refuse, which is that they'll be primaried. And so obviously there's a fear factor that Trump is trying to build in.
Senator Markey, I'll let you finish, but I have to translate. It's an older movie. For our younger viewers, that means a Republican primary with Musk and others pouring much money in there is a decapitated horse's head. And I just want the younger viewers to get the reference. Go ahead.
No, and I thank you for that clarification, but it's a very scary message that they send. At the same time, you can say all you want about waste and fraud and corruption, but if members of the Senate, Republican members of the House and Senate, have to vote on cutting Medicaid, which affects children and families all across our country, 30% of all funding in Medicaid goes to keep grandma in nursing homes. 50% of those people have Alzheimer's. The same thing is true for educational programs in red and blue states that provides for the funding for the school systems all across our country. If it's voting to gut clean air and clean.
Here's what Trump's going to do. And he's going to let certain things go through, but he's also going to cut back and make a new executive order for certain things. And that's what I feel he's going to do next. That, this, well, we let you have Medicare and all that. No, we had Medicare and that, but he's going to act like he he didn't touch these
water programs. If it's voting to cut solar and wind, which pulls out at 80%, well, now it's no longer waste and fraud. It's those specific programs that are being gutted by Republican votes. And now they do that at their own political peril heading into the 2026 political cycle. And so all of a sudden it gets exposed for what Doge and Elon Musk are saying is waste and fraud, because ultimately those are the programs that families rely upon, including, by the way, the NIH funding, which they put a freeze on. Well, that funding is used to find that funding is used to find the cure for Alzheimer's and for heart disease and for cancer. And that's not red or blue. That's every family in our country. So
I'm going to keep you here again. We got two lawyers. One of them's a politician, so pardon me for jumping in. But on that point, I want to share and then let you respond to a professor of medicine on the very important point you raised. Let's take a listen.
That fundamental research then leads to the discoveries for the next cancer therapy, for the next kidney failure therapy, or for the next vaccine for bird flu. We want to continue to be the leader in innovation around healthcare and just science in general in the world.
To that point, go ahead, sir.
Well, the president of one of the leading medical institutions in Boston said to me on Sunday, if they do this, we might as well hand over medical research in the future to China, because that is who we are. This is the scientific lead which we have in our nation. And to put a freeze on NIH funding, to say to medical institutions, to say to researchers across the country that the funding will not be there, well, it's also a message, again, to families in our country, that the one thing they all want our government to find is the cure for all of these diseases which run through their family's history.
Sure.
Research is medicine's field of dreams from which we harvest the findings that give hope to families that a cure can be found. In 1900, 18% of all children in our country died before the age of 5. And then what happened? Vaccines, medical research, Medicaid, Medicare, that transformed our relationship with healthcare for every family, not just the wealthy. And what they're doing right now is putting in the crosshairs every one of these programs that goes right to the core of every hope and dream that people have for their families. As Ralph Waldo Emerson said, health is the first wealth. And that's where they have to go to find the money for their tax breaks.
Well,
and
Senator,
I think when the rubber hits the road on the Senate floor, they're going to be very difficult votes.
Health is the first wealth. That's what we call bars. I don't know if you know that expression, but it means a deep truth. And you think about this is not just all the Washington clash. It's what you reminded us of tonight, why we showed the sound from the professor. I appreciate that. Before I let you go, amidst all the serious stuff, very quick, because I'm running over on time, you mentioned The Godfather. Let's get your best Boston movie of all time. I'll do mine. It's only fair, because, we have a little fun on this program amidst the world. So my best Boston movie, personal opinion, The Departed. What's yours?
Best Boston movie of all time is Departed. It captures, let me put it like this, there's kind of a bilingual language that kids grow up with. They can speak urban or in schools speak suburban, you know what I mean, to be bilingual if they're going to be moving out to the suburbs. But I thought Leonardo DiCaprio captured that perfectly.
A truth, a kind of a Boston truth.
Yeah, he can speak South Boston, but he can also speak Winchester, which I think was the point that movie made. But it's all part of one community.
I wouldn't have gone first if I'd known it was going to be your answer. I figured you had some other classic, who knows. Senator Markey, on the joy and the stakes. Thanks for your time tonight, sir.
No, great to be with you. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Coming up, we have an insider from USAID on what we need to actually understand about the facts and the consequences of what's happening right now, and scrutiny on the way that the misuse of attention of Twitter, now X, is ricocheting in our politics. MSNBC's Chris Hayes is here on this story live in this program. I know it's not 8 p.m. Eastern, but he's here tonight. Stay with us. We want to turn now to something that we think is really interesting. And if you happen to watch MSNBC, I don't know, do you? We can also tell you we have one of our great MSNBC colleagues, Chris Hayes, coming up in this hour. So with that in mind, take a look at how Elon Musk is at it again in the Oval Office while the president issues more orders that claim to grant Musk powers that few others have in government. The courts will be the last word on that. But to broaden out right now, how did Elon Musk get here? He is famously wealthy, but there is a lot of evidence that it is not money alone. And think about all the other loud, super rich billionaire types who would love to wield this power in the US and who are not. There are other differences about him. Musk has proven to be a bold, sometimes crass, attention seeker at all costs. And there's no obvious reason
like
to
Trump.
completely neglect someone wielding this level of power. Indeed, the story you see on your screen is about his attention. The New Yorker joking that he's pushing aside the cartoon visage of Donald Trump, the tuft of yellow hair at the very swearing in. Time more recently this week saying Musk is practically at the desk like a president himself. Critics say Musk's approach to the government right now is like his shredding of Twitter, then X. And there are criticisms there, but I want to be clear with you because we are always as factual as possible. While people have launched many understandable criticisms of this, when it comes to understanding how things are working, there are actually two sides to how Musk used Twitter, now X, that are relevant right now. One is the obvious total failure from a business perspective. He's supposed to be a business guy. He got a lot of money from banks on the principle and the expectations he would be good at business, but he lost a ton of money.
Elon Musk has struck a deal to buy Twitter for $44 billion.
Twitter shareholders are making a lot of money on this deal. Elon Musk is forking over a ton of money.
It's a very dicey financial proposition for him, even as the richest man in the world.
X is worth 71.5% less than it was at the time that Elon Musk bought it. The social media platform is still seeing a negative cash flow because of a 50% drop in ad revenue.
Numbers don't lie. That crash was the brutal economic reality. So Musk lost the company a lot of money. Ultimately, there are debts to pay even when you're that rich. So his partners, his business loans, whatever collateral he puts up on that, he is way down. But in terms of raw attention, it was a different story. Musk used X to make himself far more interesting and relevant and controversial. He won the attention war in 2024 as under his management, while it lost all that money, remember, which all of his banker investors are mad about, also got 30 times the daily traffic than many rivals. Now, our colleague Chris Hayes has his eye on exactly this battle to control attention. And if you've noticed it from the tech inaugural to the way tech has been a central feature of our politics, Hayes argues it's the defining battle right now.
Sorry, I'm
Younger
behind the
people,
screen.
sometimes called Gen Z,
Why I can't see
are all
you
over
guys.
social media. Many stay up late just to check their feeds.
Could be in jail too.
And it goes beyond just your friends or youthful things. This type of internet, always online, always something new, and digital attention merchants using a business model to make young people and everyone else continue to feel that way. This is affecting not only how we live and how people are raised and how we communicate with each other. It's become a kind of a baseline of our life and politics. It's not a coincidence that this election cycle, if you notice, had a heck of a lot more tech during the campaign and all the way up to the inauguration and all those tech billionaires. And this sort of constant internet life is something that not only Hayes diagnoses in this smart new book, I finished it, but it's also something comic Bo Burnham explored in a streaming Netflix special, Inside. Everything, all the time. The joke is on us, and the joke is familiar because we're living through it. And if you are of a certain age, I will tell you I am, you might remember talking about online and offline.
Mm-hmm.
That very distinction doesn't exist for many anymore. Certainly not for Musk and some of these followers. And the idea that we could ever hold this at bay in our life and politics, an understandable urge, has for the time being been completely defeated. Understanding this stuff so that we might be better educated and even reform our tech and our politics, these companies that have the reach and power of the largest oil company you've ever heard of with 10% of the regulations, this all matters right now. And Chris is here, Chris Hayes, when we return. Who are you going to call Chris Hayes? MSNBC host of All In with the new best-selling book, The Sirens Call, How Attention Became the World's Most Endangered Resource. It debuted at #1 on the New York Times bestseller list, which is a big deal. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
I can say I finished the whole book.
You read it.
You know that.
You were one of the first readers. I got you a galley and you read it right away.
So as they say, I have questions, you know that term, but before them, tell us what's important about your book right now for viewers.
Well, I think people right now, over the last few weeks, have been struggling with how to stay focused and how to deal with the onslaught of pulls on their attention from the news. And we've ended up in a scenario where the kind of private life experience of these constant siren calls, these constant compelled forms of attention on us with the buzz of the phone and the incoming is now being mirrored in public discourse between Trump and Musk, who are doing the exact same thing at the macro level. And in the case of Musk, with the platform that he bought, it's like the Venn diagram of both of them. And the whole book is about the fact that attention is the defining resource of our time, that it's finite, that it's powerful, and that there is an incredibly sophisticated world of attention capitalism built to extract it from us, often essentially against our will.
So briefly, and then I want to play something. Does attention capitalism's success, which we see in what the most valuable companies are in the world, it's inarguable, require politics to be this way? Because that operates in many countries.
Well, I think we've seen much of what's happening in our country mirrored in other places. I mean, the kind of discourse that attention cap select for is a discourse that is maximally attentionally salient and has no other value it's pursuing other than that.
Right.
The platform only exists for one purpose: to maximize the number and hours of eyeballs on the site so as to monetize it with selling ads against it.
Right.
And there is nothing else it's trying to do that you and I are trying to do. Or
okay, I'm going to stop that one. Really? I'm sorry. I know, guys. I appreciate you all. Y'all coming here and supporting me on this and listening and having an open mind. I don't know what you guys are really talking about, like I said. But I want to thank you all for coming. And let me look and see what else. Oh. Do you want to know about the American bar system? Maybe I'll leave that for tomorrow. Because I'm starving right now and I'm getting a little tired. American Bar System has board association, excuse me. It's weighing in on this too. So, let's see. Government. Trump. Law. Trump. Wake up, America, because we need to. Yeah, I'm starving right now, too. So, much love, respect. I don't know what to do because there's so much information out there. And I feel like I just bits and pieces here. And there's just so much of what I can actually play on here. Okay. We need to understand and wake up. You know, we've been smothered for all these years. Oh, they always do this. The Democrats, Republicans, etc. Yeah, the richer are getting richer and the poorer are getting poorer. Well, now we are going to be the poorest country in the world. We are going to be the poorest because the Republicans is taking anything and everything away from us. And if you feel that this is not going to happen, well, at least if you would follow, maybe you're right. Maybe you are right. Come back, look it all up. Come tell me how you feel. Oh, by the way, there is a lot of people who voted for Trump do not want, are so ashamed that they voted for him. Lots. So, thank you all for coming. I really, really appreciate it. Love and respect. And, y'all take care of each other. Keep informed. Keep your mind going. Keep your heart going. Just remember, take care of yourself. There you go. And that is so true. So true. And that's what's the problem. Not only did Trump go and break what's in the middle of our whole government, he has alienated the whole world against us. All. There is not a single country that has any respect for Trump, for anything he's doing. He's like a dizzy blonde. Well, yeah, he does have blonde hair. Dizzy blonde changes his mind on a dime. Yeah, well, that's true. No, I agree, Leather. I mean, I don't hate any other country. The only time I hated anyone was when they attacked 9/11. I mean, the bombers and all that, yes, okay? But if you can't trust your neighbor, then who could you trust? Because if you don't have your back of your neighbor, they're not going to have your back. So we, the Democrats, have to have the back of Republicans. We'll have to get that settled again too. So much love, respect, and I really mean I'm leaving this time. Oh, very good question. He wants to develop it so he can own it. He's willing to take over it. Our military is going and kick out all the people, pretty much. He wants to develop it and make money. That's all he has intelligence for, is to go and make, not make money, spend money, develop. Okay. Love you. But that was a good question. I'm glad you brought it up. But to no king for USA.